Okay, so hello and welcome back to another Unity tutorial. In this one we're going to be completing Tracer, making her pulse bomb. It's the only ability left. I know with Genji I did miss deflect and his ultimate. He already has so much with his like double jump and wall climb and shurikens. I will probably revisit him and finish off the deflect. I probably won't do the ultimate as I've said already, because it's just, you know, you press a button and then you go melee and then you go back. And that would require just doing some animation work and then, you know, triggering an animation to swing the sword. That's all it is really. Still a bit too much effort. That's not what I'm focusing on. I'm focusing on proper mechanics. So with Tracer's ult, we've got throwing out a projectile. The projectile sticks to things, and then after a certain amount of time it detonates and deals damage in an area. So instead of dealing damage in an area for this, I'm just gonna like have it detonate and like do particles after it's stuck to something. And then obviously if you do want to deal damage, well, I would need to make something that can take damage. So I'll probably end up doing a video for this series, but it won't be on a particular character. I'll do the input thing that I was on about last video, and I'll do just creating some sample enemies with like health bars so that we can actually test abilities dealing damage. So that'd be pretty fun. But yeah, this video is going to be all about the pulse bomb. So I'll give you an example after I find my patrons, and then obviously we'll get into making it. So thanks to Michael for Borm and Remy Bowden for their donations on Patreon this month. If anyone else is able to help out, then the link in the description below. You also get access to these project files and any other projects I make from now on. So yeah, let's get into the video. Before I made this, I thought it'd be pretty cool rather than using like a sphere. I'd make a pretty quick in Blender. I mean, I'm no good at modeling anyway. I just made a pulse bomb. It resembles the pulse bomb. Like, it looks somewhat similar to the pulse bomb. Oh, why is my Chrome not opening? There we go. Like, I looked it up earlier just to make sure I got it right. It looks similar to it in some way, shape or form. I only spent about 5 minutes on it, so you know, don't be too harsh. But the point is, it looks better than the default shape. So this is what our pulse bomb is going to be. Now, I haven't done the explosion off camera. All I did was just fiddling with the sticking to make it work right, because I think Tracer's ult, when it sticks to something, is flat on the surface that it hits. Now usually it's on a person, so you know, whatever. I don't know what it actually looks like exactly, but the point is it's going to work. So I've made a cube here with a script that I'm not going to bother going through. I'm just going to let you guys get it. It literally just moves an object forwards and backwards in whichever axis you want. So you put in here and it uses them, and it just moves it on a sine curve. So obviously a sine curve is like, if you had the axes on a sine curve, it's like go up and down. So if you use if you use time.time, as time goes on, which is essentially just going along this axis forever, you move forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards, and then you multiply it by a value so that you go further in that direction. And you'll see that in a second when I press play. The only code I've written for this is the sticking, so if you actually watch, I'm going to go through it from scratch, don't worry. I press play, it falls because of gravity, and it sticks to this cube. And then if I click on here, the cube's distance is 1 on the X, none on the Y, none on the Z. And that's just because, as you can see on the X, it moves 1 to the right and then 1 to the left. So its total distance is 2, because it's 1 in either direction. And then obviously I can set Y if I want to, so it goes up and down on the Y. Could do it in Z if I wanted to. But I'm just going to leave it as X. It's for an example. I have a moving target, and obviously if I made it go like 3, it would go further. But the point is, I've got the pulse bomb sticking to it, and then the rest of the work I'll just do in the video because I know how to do it anyway. It's pretty simple. It's just making the, after a certain amount of time, it detonates and it goes bang, basically. So we're going to make that. What we need is, we need to go delete the code that I've already made. So stick to surface on contact, delete, if I can press the delete button. Alright, now, what you'll need for this is you'll just need a model of whatever you want. I've just made my own as I've shown you. It's up to you. You can just use a default shape or make your own model, or if you go through the Patreon way, you can actually get this model through here. I'm not copyrighting it or anything. It's not my design anyway. I just quickly ripped it off. I mean, it's literally just a few cylinders with bevels, and some yellow things on the middle to make it look like the Tracer ult. So all this has is a rigid body, so yep, you need a rigid body, and a collider. That's not a trigger, we want the trigger off so it physically collides with things, and that's that. So what we need is, we need to go and write that script I just had, so we're going to go call it, what was it, like stick to surface, or something like that. Well, I'll call it stick surface, like on contact. Right, so when it collides with something, it sticks to it. So the code, we need to put it in the namespace just to be consistent, so it's not going to be about abilities or player, it's just a generic script. Cool, alright, what do we need to do with this? Well, we need to store reference to the collider, so we can set it to be a trigger or a, well, collider whenever we want, so private collider. I could call it collider, but the problem is there's already a built-in thing with collider, so it tells you, you should probably change that, so I'll call it my collider. And private reference to the rigid body, so when it sticks to something we can tell it to stop using gravity and messing stuff up. Then we also want to store a private transform, because rather than setting the parent of the pulse bomb to the thing we hit, we actually want to create an empty game object and do that. The reason being, if we stick to a character and the character dies before the pulse bomb goes off, we don't want the pulse bomb to disappear, because obviously if the parent gets destroyed, then the child gets destroyed. So you actually don't want it to be a child, you just want it to follow it. So the way we're going to do that is make a dummy game object, and we'll call it like stick parent. And then we'll store a private boolean whether we've stuck or not, because if we have stuck and if we haven't stuck, we want to do stuff differently. So has stuck is false. Why not? We'll just initiate it. Now let's zoom in. In the awake method, we need to get some things. My collider is, get component collider on the object. It's better to use collider than mesh collider here, because you don't know whether it's going to be. Maybe you want to use a sphere collider or a cube collider or something, a capsule collider. So collider is just the generic class, and it'll work most of the time. Well, it'll work all the time for any colliders. That's why you should use it. Like if you had a different shaped thing using the same scripts and use a different type of collider, then it wouldn't work unless you put the generic type. And then also if we go up here, we might as well just say require component type of collider, because this isn't going to work without a collider, and it's also not going to work without a rigid body, so we might as well say we need that. And I don't think we'll be using those, so we can get rid of that. Alright, after awake, we're going to need an update function, but I'd say we write that afterwards, so I'm just going to put it in there and come back to it. So now we're going to write the chunkiness of the code. There's not really much to write, to be honest. This is quite a simple script. We need an on collision enter, which is, it gets called by Unity when we hit something. And first of all, we want to check if we've stuck, if has stuck. Return. If we've already stuck to something and we hit something else by touching it, we don't care. Now this should never get called anyway, because I think on collision enter doesn't get triggered if it's a trigger collider, and we'll get into changing that in a second. So this is like a safety check. Don't forget to put that, because if you don't put it and then you get some problems, then that'll be why. So just keep that in there. If we're stuck, we don't want to do any of this code. Alright, so as soon as we touch something, we want to snap to the bit we touched. And that's just so that we don't hover with a weird offset. Like if the pulse bomb hits something, you want it to be flat on its surface. So we're going to say set our position equal to the collision, which is just data on the collision when we hit something, dot contacts, which is, the bits we hit. It's an array, 0, the first thing in the array, the first thing we hit, dot point. I don't actually know how you can have more than one collision point, but apparently you can, and it might be something to do with a collision over time or something. Maybe if I don't know. We want the first collision anyway. Maybe sometimes you can have multiple collisions in one frame due to the nature of frames being in real life there isn't a frame rate. You can't do two things at once. There's always a very short nanoseconds between two things. You can never do two things in the same instant. Whereas in games you can, because it's on a frame basis. Only 60 things can happen in a second in most games. Anyway, that was a little just rant. It wasn't a rant, it was a little off track there. So once we've hit something, we also want to set ourselves to be a trigger, not a collider, because what will happen is we'll end up colliding inside the thing we've collided with, and it'll end up giving you some glitchy movement. If you've ever had a collider inside another collider and they try and push out of each other, because obviously physics says two things can't be physically inside occupying the same space at the same time. So that's what it tries to do. We want to make it a trigger so it can actually be on it and not cause any problems. And then we want to do that thing I was on about, making like an anchor point, like parent to stick to. So we can actually create a new game object in here, just called like new parent, and set it equal to a new game object, and we just pass in a name, and then this is the name of the object when it's created, so we'll just call it stick transform. That's just what it is in the scene, it doesn't really matter. Then with our new parent, we want to set its position to our position. So it is where we are, and we want to set the parent's rotation, not to our current rotation, because we want to snap our rotation to be flat. So if we hit a wall, we want to be pointing up from that wall. If you don't know what normals are, then you should probably look that up. But what normals are is if you've got like the flat floor here, right? Then the normal to this floor is up. That's obviously not, it's meant to be a straight line up. If you hit a slant, if this is like a wall and you hit this, this is upwards. And then literally like any other surface, if you hit this bit of the surface, then that's the normal. So the normal is the perpendicular plane to what you hit. So when we hit something, we want to kind of look in that normal arrow's direction so that we're flat onto the surface. So quaternion.look rotation gives you a rotation based on direction. So if we tell it the upwards of the plane, aka the normal of the plane, then this will return whatever rotation we have to be at to be up to that plane. So we can pass in collision.contacts, no, not contact count, contacts 0 dot, and just how we had point earlier, which is where we hit, we've got normal, which is, as you see, the normal of the bit we hit. Cool, so that'll set that to face upwards. And then our parent's parent, so the thing we've just made needs to parent itself to the thing we collided with, so collision.transform. The thing is, we don't want to be a child of it, but we want this thing to be. This is why it's like a dummy thing. If this gets destroyed, it doesn't matter. It's just temporary to hold our location and rotation. And then we're going to set the rigid body to be kinematic, and that just means that gravity stops acting on it, and it can only move via code physics as such, rather than like the simulation physics engine. It just stops it, you know, being affected by gravity in simple terms. There are other ways to do that, but is kinematics the easiest? And then we're just going to say, yep, we're stuck now. Alright, you could put that in a function, but it's fine, it's the only thing in there. So that just handles basically, we hit something, make sure we haven't hit anything yet. If we haven't, then stick to it, create an object. Well, that's the thing, we're not actually sticking to it, we're making an object that sticks to it. Then, in the update, we want to set our position and rotation every frame to be the same as that parent object. And the reason why that's a good thing is because, one, if you just randomly set your parent to be something else, you'll scale all weird because you inherit the scale of your parent. Whereas when we create this blank game object to be our, like, the thing we're mimicking, it has a scale, rotation, and position of, like, 0. Well, no, sorry, scale of 1, 1, 1. So it doesn't mess up our rotation, our scale, sorry. What we're going to do every frame is we're going to basically say, yeah, if we're stuck, then, and also if our parent is not null. The only time this we can be stuck and it's not null, or sorry, that it is null, is when the thing we've stuck to gets destroyed. So for example, if you stick a pulse bomb on an enemy and that enemy dies before the pulse bomb goes off, this will be true because we've stuck, but the parent's gone, so that's why this else will happen. So we're going to write code in here. So let's say we've stuck to something and it still exists. Well, set our position to its position and set our rotation to its rotation. That'll make us, you know, just like how in the example I showed you, the cube, it follows it, it sticks to it, and the actual pulse bomb isn't attached to the cube, it's just following the empty game object, which is attached to the cube. And then as soon as that thing gets destroyed, which can happen, obviously, you stick your bomb to someone and your teammate kill steals or something, and then you bomb, you actually want it just to probably fall to the floor and then blow up where it is. You don't want it to disappear, it'd be pretty bad. So in this case, we want to set the trigger. We set it to true, but we actually want to set it back to... we set it to false. Wait. Yeah, we set it to true. There it is. We set it to true. We want to set it back to false here. We want to set the is kinematic back to false, so we use gravity again, and has stuck is equal to false, because we're not stuck anymore, the thing's gone. We're ready to be stuck again. Now, if we have that done, and I go back to the pulse bomb, you'll see if we put this stick code on it. Oh, is it compiled? Did I change its name? Stick to surface on contact. Make sure your class names are the same as your script names. Pulse bomb, stick on contact. Alright, so if we press play, it'll fall down, hit it, and it didn't work because clearly I've just missed something somewhere. Get the rigid body, get that. If we've stuck and the parent's not null, set our position and rotation to that. False, false, false. Alright, what's going down here? I've clearly done something wrong here. If we stuck, return, set our position to the contacts point. My collide is true. Create a new object. And then here we go. We need to set stick parent equal to the new parents new parent dot transform. So up here, the stick parent, I never actually set it. I missed out that line. So just make sure you've got that. So now when I press play and it falls, it should stick to it. Yep. So as you see, it's stuck on that edge, and now it's like it must have hit it right on the edge, and the edge, the corner point's normal is up in that direction, so it's on the edge. And if I try and move this pulse bomb, it won't let me because every frame it basically overrides it back to be. If I pause, I can move it, and then unpause, it snaps back. Now if you look in the scene, the pulse bomb isn't actually a child of the cube. The cube has this stick transform, which is what we spawned in through code. Now as you see, if I move the stick transform, then it moves. All the pulse bomb is doing is mimicking that position and rotation of the stick transform. Now if I press play again and show you what I mean about the, let's say your enemy was killed, right? Well, if we take the cube and kill it as such by, just deleting it from the scene, then the pulse bomb falls to the floor and just sticks to the floor. Or if it hit an enemy, it would stick to the, the next thing. And you also notice that the floor now actually has a stick transform, which is where it is stuck to on the floor now. You probably want like a max duration on that, otherwise it'd be stuck to your floor forever. Now having like a transform component just in the scene isn't taxing. It's not going to be rendered or done, like nothing's going to happen to it, so it's not taxing on performance. It's just a bit ugly, but then again, when you unload the scene, it's gone, so it's not the worst thing in the world. So all we need to do now is make it so we can chuck it. So that's the next thing. So tracer, we don't want to write a specific script here, because all it does is it's just throwing a projectile, a game object that it instantiates. That's a very generic script, so we can just sorry, my voice is going. We can just say like throw object. I mean, the Genji shuriken thing, we could probably modify that, but let's just say like launch game object. I think Unity does game object with capital like that. Launch game object. Let's go chuck that in the scripts folder before I forget. I don't need those. That's just the me when I was messing around with Blender earlier. So yeah, scripts, launch game object, and we've put that on tracer, right? Cool. So I'm gonna need to make a transform on like here. Create an empty game object. That's with the arms, and just go put it between the arms, like over here somewhere. So this is like where the pulse bomb's gonna leave from when we use the ability. And you want to, when tracer throws it, it kind of arcs it, so make this blue arrow aim upwards a bit, so that you toss it a bit. So just set that back to like minus 0.1, 0.9. I just like having nice numbers. Minus 25 degrees. I don't know the exact numbers Overwatch use. I think minus 25 might chuck it a bit too high. Oh well, it's up to you to tweak it. Let's just call this pulse bomb spawn transform. Cool. Let's go to the scripts then. So what does this script need to know about? Well, it needs to know about there we go. It needs to have a prefab to spawn, so private game object projectile prefab. It needs to have a private transform projectile spawn transform, which is what we just set up on Tracer, and then private float launch force or projectile launch force. We'll come back if there's any more, but that's all I can think of right now. So all we're going to do is we're going to say void update. And as I said, I'm going to do an input video next, so I'm just going to hard code, if input dot get key down Q. I think it's Q in Overwatch for all, right? Yeah. Launch projectile. Like, I'll have to do a separate video on like a cooldown system as well, because currently you can just kind of spam it, but it's fine. I'm all about showing the mechanics here. I'm not spending too much time on all the mechanics when it comes to like, wait, what am I doing? Private void. Alright, so what do we want to do when we launch it? Well, we want to say game object projectile instance is equal to, so where we're going to put it, well, we need to instantiate the prefab, so projectile prefab, where we're going to do it at projectile spawn transform dot position with what rotation? Projectile spawn transform dot rotation, and then I'm just gonna make this easier to read by putting it onto new lines. There we go. So that's what we're spawning, where and in what rotation, and now we have access to the instance, so we can say projectile instance dot get component rigid body. It's up to you to make sure it has a rigid body, and we're adding a force. In what direction? Well, the direction is going to be the way it's currently forcing. Currently facing. So we could just go for this rotation. I mean, then again, I actually don't want to spawn it with a rotation. Quaternion.identity, and I want to add a force in the projectile spawn transform dot rotation. No, sorry. I need to convert that into a look direction. So quaternion dot look direction. Ooh, look. Yeah, look for. Wait, I'm getting a bit confused now. I want to add it in the forward vector. That's it. I'm getting confused now. Projectile spawn transform dot forward multiplied by the force, projectile launch force, and it has presumably a velocity change because we don't care about the mass of the actual object. Cool. Let's see if this works. So if we say the projectile to spawn is from our assets pulse bomb, the spawn transform is that, and the force is 10. I don't know how much it's going to be. Let's see what happens. So if we press Q, chucks one out. The only problem is it's not sticking, but I think that's because I haven't actually told the prefab. The prefab contains a valid script. Alright, let me just quickly nip into the prefab, remove that script, go back, and now can we apply? Cool. Get rid of that pulse bomb. Let's have a look. So if I press Q, it throws it and sticks, throws it and sticks. Sticks. The only problem problem is it's always just facing in that one direction. So we want to, I mean, it's up to you really. I'm going to make it always face upwards. So when we spawn it, we set it to quaternion.look rotation vector 3.up, so it's just looking straight up when it spawns. Let me put in another close bracket there. How's the video going? 24 minutes. Alright, I'll start to close up now. We just need to make it blow up basically. That's the last thing. So that's moving. Cute. I overshot it. Cute. There, it sticks to it. Or like throw your ult up there. Okay, it's up to you to mess with the physics settings, but the point is I can now throw out this thing that sticks to the surface that it hits. So that's up to you to sort out. Next, let's go to the prefabs. Pulse bomb. We want to add another script to it. We're going to add let's just clear this rotation. I don't know why. There we go. That's easier to see. We want to add a script, probably. Let's go put it in the scripts folder. It's easier. This is... We want to destroy it after a certain amount of time. And then we also want to do the particle effects. So for now, I'm gonna, rather than writing loads of scripts and doing loads of good design things that'll take a little bit longer, I'm just gonna write explode after time. I do understand there is a better way to do this, or a technically better way. We could do using my voice is really going, isn't it? Using events, so it's when it's about to destroy, we call all things that want to know about when the object's going to destroy and so on. Simple enough just to do explode after time. And then all explode after time is namespace creating characters. For something that explodes after time, what does it need to know? Well, it needs to know float lifetime, maybe. Is lifetime one word? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Private float remaining time. Update remaining time minus equals time.delta time. On the awake, make sure we actually set remaining time equal to lifetime. I mean, technically we could just reduce this over time, but let's say, yeah, I want to store that internally. And then we just say after everything, if remaining time is less than or equal to 0, then explode private void explode. So when we're about to explode, we want to destroy our cells, and then maybe we want to also, just instantiate explosion projectiles at our position, and the rotation doesn't really matter. I guess it makes more sense to do transform.rotation. Alright, so let's just have private game object explosion particles. Wait, did I put projectiles down there? Oops. I mean, I could even just put if particles, if explosion particles does not equal null, then do it. So that I can have things that get destroyed after a certain amount of time without having particles. And I guess all we need to do now is just make some quick particles for it to work. So let's say it explodes after 2 seconds. I think it's even shorter than that, but I can't remember. If we just go back into here and create an empty game object with a particle system, reset it. I know I could have just default particles. Let's just do a what we're going to say, they are destroyed when they're done, they're not looping, they have a duration of 1 second, no emission, but it's a burst of I'm no good with particles, by the way, I'm just kind of messing around. The shape could be a sphere. Bang. Bang. I mean, the lifetime needs to be shorter, but the speed could be higher. Whoops, 0.5. Really needs to be shorter, doesn't it? And then the color over lifetime, just make it so by the end it's alpha 0, so it's just kapow. And add a tiny bit of upwards gravity, so it's minus 0.5. I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. It doesn't matter, let's just leave it like that. So we've got these explosion particles. I'll just give them a red colour so they're easy to see. Alright, you know, explosion particles. Put it into the prefabs folder. You could make stuff that's much better than this. And we just want to tell the pulse bomb basically. Pulse bomb to use these explosion particles when it blows up. And now, the final thing you've all been waiting for. I should be able to throw it. It should last for a few seconds and then get destroyed. So if we run up here, throw it, bang, stick, bang, and it goes. Throw it, stick, bang. Maybe you want to change it so that it only blows up once it's stuck, but, you know. I think this is pretty cool. So you got... That's actually really cool, isn't it? So now that we've got the whole recoil and shifting around, so we can go shift, shift, Q, E. We go back, it blows up. There we go. So I hope you like this video series. If you did, then it would really mean a lot if you left a like and subscribed and even considered helping out on Patreon. Obviously, you get access to all these files, and also it would help me out a lot. Leave suggestions for the next few characters that you want to see. Obviously, my next video will probably just be making the input system better and having cooldowns, maybe a bit of UI to go with it, because this series is actually pretty fun. I really like making this series. But yeah, if you've got any suggestions, leave them down below. Join our Discord server, all of the above. But apart from that, thanks for watching, and goodbye.